year's Sinquefield Cup is the strongest chess tournament ever. We have the highest average rating in history, with 6 of the top 10 players in the world participating. And that includes world number 1, Magnus Carlsen, also the defending champion from last year's Sinquefield Cup. The very best in chess competing today at the St. Louis Chess Club for the 2014 Sinquefield Cup. And our complete coverage from first move to winning move starts right now.
Watching St. Louis. The best in the U.S. The best in the world. Only one will be king. The Sinquefield Cup. Information at stlouischessclub.org.
Hikaru did very well against me here last year. He's a strong player. He's had some good positions against me, but he was better in a complicated game with black that ended in a draw, and the white game was a pretty standard draw compared to his other results against me. That should be encouraging.
He doesn't tend to have very many bad days, and a lot of players are just a little bit less consistent than him. So I think that's the main reason that he's the #1 player in the world at the moment.
I mean, I've done quite badly in my last 2 classical tournaments, so I'm eager to strike back. Last year there were 4 players, so then I would definitely have picked myself. This time it's not that easy, but why not? Let's go with me.
Obviously, to be good in any sport, any field, you have to have confidence in yourself. So I'm pretty sure that he probably took himself as my guess. I'd probably take myself, but I mean, that's just me. Nevertheless, I think we all are very strong players, and I think if any one of us plays very well, anything could happen realistically. I think in order to win, it's much more important simply to not lose to him as opposed to beating him. And I mean, I'll have my chances, I think, in most games, and it's just a matter of taking advantage of those chances and, you know, when I get them. And that's probably what Magnus is so good at, is taking advantage of the opportunities that he gets. He almost never lets them slip away. Yeah, I'm not the one who just lies down and dies when I have a bad position, so. I have to admit I don't really have a counter move to the sunglasses, so if he listens to this, he really should whip the sunglasses out this time as well.
Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. The strongest chess tournament ever in the history of chess. Sinquefield Cup, 2nd edition, 2014. This is round 2 action between my buddy from the United States, Carl Nakamura, and his arch nemesis, current world champion from Norway, Magnus Carlsen. Neither of these guys need any introduction to any chess player anywhere in the world. It's a hell of a game. Let's get to it. Carl Nakamura is white, Magnus Carlsen is black. Knight to c3, bishop. Now, you can watch a lot of these if you go on YouTube and watch the St. Louis Chess Club and Scholastic Center has their own channel, and they'll have each round. You can watch the whole round. And I remember watching the commentary at this point at the beginning, and they went, oh boy, here we go. Another Berlin. And then Magnus decides to go g6. Takes it out of the Berlin. I guess he didn't want to go down any theoretical lines, as he said later in an interview, in a short interview we had. Carl, castles, bishop, c3, of course. The whole key to this whole thing is this d4 square here. a6 kicks in the bishop. Now there's several moves here, all pretty close. The number one move by the computer is bishop takes, and I believe they said Vishy and Nan played that not too long ago in this position. But Carl decided to back up the bishop. D6, interesting move. Now, that's the third choice on the computer, and not to say that it's the worst move by far, because all three moves are so close together in score. It's what you had in preparation, and D6, of course, is what he prepared. D4, Carl goes after the center right away. Bishop D7. You know, what to do here? Do you want to bury the dark squared bishop? Which is the whole idea of this move. I think D5 is the answer to that. Not only does it kick the knight, which isn't really mainly the point, I don't think, but this pawn buries this bishop, at least for now. You're going to have to pull F5 moves later to release that pawn. So I think that's a good move. I would have chosen that move myself. Knight comes back. Bishop takes. Queen takes. C4. Another excellent move. One, to reinforce the pawn here and threaten maybe here later. But two, to leave in a space for your knight to get out. H6. Interesting move. And oddly enough, it's also the computer's move. This must be some kind of deep theory that most of us amateurs aren't familiar with. Second choice of the computer is knight to F6, and then B5 is last. H6 for Magnus. Knight to C3 by Carl, since he moved the C pawn. And F5, here we go. You've got to get that bishop active. Black's a little cramped up here. And we're on move 11, and Black's not even close to castling yet. Knight to reinforce the E-pawn. Knight to F6, finally get the knight out. F3. Finally castles. Rook to E1, it shows to the computer, E takes F5. Rook to E1 was done, or excuse me, B4 was done by Akaro. Now this is the move here, I think, that they explained about later, the C6, that really cramped down on the game a little bit. D takes, knight takes. Now granted, this pawn is very backwards now. You could always look in the future. If this queen moves, the pawn has to retake. Black's kingside pawns are shambles in that scenario. A3 just to reinforce the B pawn. Knight to D4, that's a really good spot for that knight. Knight can't be tolerated there. So bishop to B2 first. Magnus moves the rook. And now a knight to E2. Interesting enough, knight to H5 was the computer's choice as well. I should say second choice, as they're both close. Knight takes, pawn takes. Now granted, there's double pawns here. Now I don't think these double pawns are the end of the world. In fact, they might hinder white a little bit here. So I'm not sure where Carl went wrong. I don't think he went wrong. I shouldn't say that, but something's just not quite right. He should have a better advantage than this. E takes, knight. Not as advisable as queen takes, because after knight to E4, queen to E6, rook to E1, and white's got a pretty good advantage, almost a point and a half. Or I should say a pawn and a half. Rook takes F5 instead. Doesn't really gain much, because after G4, knight to E4, white's got a good advantage too. So knight to F4 was the correct move. F6. Now I talked about this move a little bit. I don't think they wanted to give Magnus the opportunity to open up the game a little bit. It is the computer's third choice, but to be fair, we're talking about tenths of a pawn, not even that. Hundredths of a pawn difference in score. So F6. Bishop takes G3. H3 check, King G2. And then the knight escapes on G5. Now, let's stop and look at this. This game is pretty even. I think both their kings are pretty much exposed the same. Black's got a little bit more protection. This is a move that I wouldn't have saw. I mean, he wants to go after this pawn. And he plays queen to B1. I thought that was an excellent move. Forcing the king to move. He didn't want the king here, of course, because of the bishop coming down. So he went to H7. Queen to D3. Good spot for that queen. Get it up, hitting that pawn. Bishop E5. Rook A to E1. And this is where I think Magnus saw what was going on. They weren't any time trouble. I think there was 6, 8, 10 minutes left for each round. Move 26. I think Magnus just decided this is the best he's going to get out of this. It can go wrong. It could go right. But it was enough. The other two games were finished, and they were both decisive games. And you'll see those videos later. I'm not going to tell you who won. Bishop takes. H takes. Queen checks. King to G1. Now, if he had went here, it would have been a massive blunder. Because queen here would have made it. King to G1. Queen takes. King. Check. King. Check. King. Check. King. Check. And that's where they called it a draw. I thought it was a really good game. I thought both of them played their hardest. Granted, Nakamura had an advantage with the white pieces, but this is a great game on both their parts. When you have two world-class players like these guys, and they're both playing the best they can, a draw is more than a reasonable result. Anyway, folks, that's one of the games from round 2, the second annual Sinquefield Cup 2014. I hope you enjoyed it. The highest rated tournament ever in the history of chess, and I'm proud to say it's here in the United States, right in the heartland of the U.S. in St. Louis, Missouri. And I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.